We are live.
And you can just introduce me as T.
Okay. I usually give it a minute or two.
Think we're live. I see heart.
Yes, we are live. I'm just sharing the link with others. I apologize. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and all between the binary. This is Get Informed with Wajeeh. I have a special one for you today. I have a special guest coming all the way from this will hold. I have T with us today to discuss some big important topic that is not getting as much attention from the media. And I thought once I read the article that discussed the 2024 stolen election by the elite, of course. How is the 1% involved? How is the far right extremists involved? Why are we facing this situation? And what can you do to help put an end to that? We'll discuss all of these scenarios and we'll discuss all of these points with my special guest, T. Thank you so much for coming over.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Grateful to be here.
T, for my audience, and I'm sure like you're way more popular and famous than me, and everyone knows who you are. But for anyone that doesn't know who you are, do you mind introducing yourself in a brief introduction?
Of course. So I just go by T. When we started this project, I call it a project. It's really something I've been working on legislation for over a decade. But when we started this project on in this election security lane, we started getting some pretty strongly worded. Sorry, my cat is determined to knock over my light. Strongly
Ah,
worded uh, threats from people. And so I just go by T. I've got a team with the Common Coalition, and there's 62 of us. And we just work to unpack the data and get to the bottom of the technology that was in place in 2024 to help facilitate the hijacking of the 2024 election. And we've just for 18 months just sort of hit the ground running. My actually personally, my Twitter account was taken down by Elon Musk last year. And so we transitioned over to Substack and started working more in a long form investigative process. Someone had basically said, oh yeah, Elon and a couple of other influencers, this is what really happened. And within 2 minutes of that, our account went dead and we couldn't get it back. So here we are now on the and sort that's sort of proof, right? Like if you can call these guys all the names in the world and not get punished for it, but I'm talking about election security, and all of a sudden our account gets blasted, that's sort of like, we must be onto something. So
mhm.
so long story
So
short,
much for freedom of speech and so much
we're
for bringing back the First Amendment on Twitter.
Yep. Yeah. And then and what's even a little bit nuttier is that within a minute of that, our Instagram was also shut down. And Instagram and Twitter are not the same family. So that just led us to believe, and we were able to get our Instagram account back, but not the Twitter. But that just led us to believe that, hey, these parties are colluding because clearly, these aren't the same people. So to have that happen the way that it did was really interesting. So we're here. We're in the election security lane now, sort of by accident. I fell into a rabbit hole when I was researching a book. And here we are, just unpacking all the data and helping people understand how they hijacked it and what we need to do to get out of it. And that's been our mission now. We're all volunteers. And that's all we do at this point.
You said you've been working on this for 18 months now.
Mhm. Literally right after the election, because so many of us just knew something was wrong. We could tell it felt very much like 2016. The results came in so quickly. There were just so many things that didn't make sense. And then once we started getting access to the cast vote records and we could plot out, looking at the data, suddenly all these Democrats supposedly voted blue down ballot and then flipped red at the top. And it's like, that was just bizarre. We knew that didn't happen, and it was in the swing states. It wasn't across all voting methods. And we just knew that something had happened. And initially, we thought it was the tabulators. That's the way that it appeared. It looked like a vote flipping algorithm. But then the more we dug, we had seen on election night in Michigan and Wisconsin that millions of votes had disappeared from the system of record. Like they were, and voting is an additive process first and foremost. So that was a major red flag. And then the second red flag was that no one was discussing it. So when we were asking, Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson and some of these others, like, hey, how come millions of votes disappeared from your system? Does anybody have an explanation for it? And they just ignored us. They didn't even address it. And so then the day after,
Really?
and in Michigan, another 250,000 50 votes disappeared. And so we just knew something was cooking. And then in November is when we found the fake county vote banks. We found the online podcast that had all of the fake county vote banks, and we were able to match the vote banks to variables that were in the election numbers. So the exact number in Florida of Democrats and Republicans combined in the early vote totals is the number in Burke County, Florida, which does not exist, but existed to be a vote bank. And so it's a data
Interesting.
swap. So they just took this data in the vote bank and removed Harris and her numbers, took this data and put it into the system of record. And that's why it looks like Democrats voted blue down ballot, but chose Trump at the top. It was just a data swap. And they did it across the swing states in Florida. And we've proven it mathematically in Florida, Michigan, Georgia, and we just finished Nevada. So
If you don't mind, we can go over the mathematics here in a second if you have a second for that. But this is basically going over my first question. You highlighted voting anomalies in Rampo, New York, with Kamala Harris, where she received literally zero votes.
zero,
Is
right?
that possible? Like, is that has it been possible? Has it happened in our U.S. elections ever to have a candidate, like the two leading candidates, receive zero vote in
Right.
any election?
No, that's not something that, you know, we've seen. That said, the first thing we do is rule out for any demographic issues, any cultural anomalies. And I'll say excuse. The reason they were giving for a zero vote is that area is predominantly comprised of Hasidic Jews. And they were stating that the rabbi in the area had said, absolutely do not vote for Kamala Harris. So the folks that were saying nothing to
Mm.
see here, it happened because this rabbi told them not to vote. That was their reasoning for there being zero votes. But that was only part of the story. The reason it even got on our radar is because Diane Sayre filed a lawsuit because she had affidavits from people that they had voted for her. And so the county only counted like 3 votes for her when in fact there had been 6. I can't remember the exact totals. It's such a small number
So
that the and it
people came out of their way to say,
yes,
"Hey,
I voted
I voted for Kamala Harris, and it says that my vote didn't count right here."
not for Kamala, for Diane Sayre, another candidate
Okay.
in that same on the same ballots in that same county in Ramapo. And so because her people were willing to come forward and sign those affidavits, it went to court. And if you look at the math of the situation, it basically ended up being like 52% of her votes didn't show up. And so that's why we started digging, because while it's just a small number of actual votes, percentage wise, if something like that happened across the system, you can imagine that a 52%, wash in the other direction is going to be problematic. And that was when we discovered the election change orders, the ECOs, that had been made between, ES&S requested ECOs
Could you
to
could for people who doesn't know what ECOs, could you tell them what an ECO is?
Sure. So you have Dominion and ES&S, and whenever they have an upgrade to their equipment or a change or something that needs to be repaired within the software, they need to patch something, there's a vulnerability, they reach out to Pro V&V and they write up a change order and they say, "We need you to go in an engineering change order. We need you to go in and address this issue. And there are only a handful of things that are within what's called de minimis. It means it's something that's negligible, like it's not going to affect. Actually, I have the definition.
Minimal,
Yeah, it's minimal.
minimal.
I had written down the a change to certified voting systems hardware, the nature of which will not materially alter the system's reliability, functionality, capability, or operation. And so they labeled these changes that they made as de minimis. But when we read what they did, they were patching, and that's not de minimis. Well, when you do something de minimis, it means it doesn't get reviewed. The public isn't made aware of it, and it isn't reviewed to ensure that it's safe and that it falls within the parameters of what the equipment is supposed to do. And so they pushed it through as de minimis, like under the radar, so the American people weren't aware that the election equipment had been changed right before the election. And that just sort of set off the firestorm, really, because then we started digging further and realized how many years they'd been using this de minimis category as a way to just push through, changes to the equipment without the American people even knowing. And then we find out that the EAC, who oversees elections for the American people, two of the members on that board or in that group are being sued because they're attached to the Heritage Foundation. And they're just making elections easier to rig. They're removing security features of our elections. So they're in the middle of lawsuits, you know, for doing this stuff. They're supposed to be protecting our votes. Not only are they not protecting them, they're making our elections weaker. So it's just the corruption, and it's all tied to the Epstein files, and it's all just a big mess. We need to burn it all down. That's what I said
What
yesterday.
is the ESNS for people are asking? They don't know what ESNS.
ES&S is the other large election equipment company. So the two largest ones are Dominion and ES&S. And between those two companies, they pretty much have a stranglehold on the entire system. They have over 70% of our election equipment is housed within those two systems.
Anagal, Anagopoli.
Agapoly. Yep.
So these are the two companies who have basically a monopoly, if I would put it in simpler words, not correctly grammarly, but they have this chokehold on the voting systems in the United States. Your article focuses on last minute engineering changes that you just recently discussed with engineered change orders made with the ES and S voting equipment. How did these companies bypass the standard independent testing by labeling software and scanners update as minimal?
By pushing through those change orders and saying that they're de minimis. If they're not labeled de minimis, then they go through a whole approval process, and the public is made aware that changes are being made to the equipment. And then the EAC has to oversee it, and they say, yes, no, we agree with this, we don't agree with this. So by labeling it de minimis, none of that happens. They just let the EAC know they did it. Hey, this is de minimis. And the EAC is like, sure, we'll sign off. Thanks. Thanks for your work. But these aren't de minimis changes. Patching the equipment is not a de minimis change. It is a substantive change to the equipment. The American people should have been notified about it, that changes were happening to the equipment. Now, that said, the equipment they supposedly changed, it was only a specific piece of equipment, like a specific version of it. But then as we started digging, we realized they've been doing this for years. So this pattern of, you know, corruption,
Wait,
let's just
what
it
do you
is.
mean they've been doing it for years? How many years have they been doing this?
Well, the EAC and ProVNV, before ProVNV, it was another company called Cyber, and Cyber was actually kicked out of the system for taking payments from ES&S under the table. That's what I mean by it's so.
What?
Yeah, we could well, and they're doing it right now. ProVNV is taking payments from Dominion under the table. That's another lawsuit that's on the table right now. So when I say it's been corrupt since the beginning, the EAC was formed after the 2000 election. In 2002, the HAVA Act went through as an oversight of
What is the
federal.
HABA Act? There's a lot of terminologies. As a former radio host, I'm used to stopping professionals and asking them to explain these terminologies. What
In
is that?
HAVA was passed. We had the 2000 debacle, which we discuss later in this in your questions,
Interview.
but I'll hit it now because it ties to this. In 2000, when the hanging chads happened, um, they used that as the excuse to get all of these election equipment companies contracts. So they pulled this whole, we don't want that to happen again. We need electronic equipment. We can't, have another situation like we had in 2000. So in 2002, they passed HAVA, Help Americans Vote Act, I believe is Help Americans Vote Act. Yes, Voting Act, to get billions of dollars to the states to let these companies know, like, come on in, doors are open. We're going to start voting electronically now. So when you look at what Dan Rather uncovered in 2007, he did a big expose. They actually created the hanging chads. So they created the debacle. And then in 2001, Caltech and MIT did a study on the 2000 election. And we had some electronic equipment in place already, and they determined that between 4 to 6 million votes disappeared in 2000. And so while we were all focused on the hanging chads and freaking out, and then the Supreme Court handed Bush, an illegitimate win, 4 to 6 million, the real heist was the 4 to 6 million votes that disappeared. So that's really, from the start, from the get-go, it has been these election equipment companies. They are owned and founded by far right interests in a private network that we are not able to audit. They say it's proprietary software. A $20 bill has more security than our elections right now. Think of it that way. If you go to the ATM, Diebold was one of the companies before that got absorbed into the companies that they are now. Diebold makes banking systems. If you put in all your digits and you're asking for $20 and that $20 doesn't come out, you go in the bank and you tell them your $20 didn't come out. They call the organizations that monitor banking, and you have three independent auditors coming over to shut down that machine and figure out what happened that your $20 didn't come out. There's a problem in the code. What is it? You know, who's stealing? What happened? We don't even have that in our elections. We have malfunctioning equipment all the time, and we don't have oversight coming in and saying, in 2016, why did 59% of the voting equipment malfunction in Black and brown neighborhoods? Why were 75,000 votes left on the table in 2016 because the election equipment stopped working? We don't have the basic, security that we do for a $20 bill over our elections. And it's all housed in this far right ecosystem. And I was on an interview yesterday, and I used to say, I don't understand why we're just okay with this. Now I understand that we didn't know, because I didn't know until I started doing this work. And every time I tell people this, they're just like jaws on the floor, not knowing that the far right owns all of our election equipment. So of course they're gonna cheat. Come on, that's not a hard, puzzle to put together, is it?
I
So
mean, as someone that comes from Saudi Arabia and has been, living in the Middle East in dictatorships and have had, Western countries to come and monitor certain countries in the Middle East elections to make sure that our elections in the Middle East go without any corruption
right.
or and I'm sorry, like while I'm hearing you talk about this, I'm just like genuinely not
Shock?
shocked, betrayed.
Yes, for sure.
It is the listen. What happened is the United States went across the world and fought wars in the name of democracy and sent its own observers to make sure that we apply democracy the way they see it best fit. And we got judged upon that. So we look upon the United States as this beacon of hope, like many like to say. And then when we look at the United States as a beacon of hope, from far away, it looks very green. But the closer you get, the more shocked, the more corruption you find, the more shocked you. I'm so, I'm sorry. I never expected the U.S. out of all places. Maybe we should send our own observers from across the world to observe U.S. elections if that's the situation. Just
Yep.
saying.
Well,
Maybe if this is the situation, the EU needs to come and send their own people.
to that point, one of the experts that helps other countries figure out whether or not their elections have been rigged is Dr. Walter Mebane Jr. And he wrote a paper in 2004, just before the 2004 election, titled "The Wrong Man is President." So he did the work, to unpack the data of the 2000 election, and he is still in this space. He's still writing papers, and there's a group called the Election Truth Alliance that I have worked with truly for this entire time, these last 18 months. We platformed their data, and they were kind of new on the scene. So I told them, go get this dude and call up Dr. Mebane Jr. and have him peer review your data so that you've got someone who's been in the game a long time and you get some credibility. And he found problems in both states that he audited, and that's Pennsylvania. He found 111,088 votes that he determined were malignant misrepresentation of the votes. That's 111,088. In total, there were over 250,000 problematic, but with certainty, he said 111,088. And then he also found problematic issues in North Carolina. So both of the states that he audited are, popping up as needing further review. And we're trying to get that done, and we just can't get anybody to even look at it. So the expert, like the grand pumbaa of election stuff, is out here saying, "Hey, there's a problem. Yes, I agree," and writes his big paper on it. And we're pushing that out so folks can see it. And to Congress, we've been calling Congress for 18 months, and now we're hitting the states with it, because that's how we get out. We've got to get the states to open investigations. And
I
I never,
think you'd be better. You do out of someone that worked on few campaigns in the United States and someone that is connected to campaign strategists. You'd be better winning state by state
yeah,
through those investigations than you would go federally. The people in the U.S. Senate and U.S. House are bought by special interests and bought by um, uh, lobbyists and foreign governments, and more than you think you know.
the Epstein file,
Um, well, yeah, mm,
it's all tied to
that.
that. Yes.
So that
So
just gives you a good idea of you'd be better off going through the state.
yeah, that's once we determined that, sorry, my cat just jumped off the chair behind me. Once we determined that that Congress wasn't gonna do anything, we started, going to the states and the state attorneys general and saying, "Look, we need to open investigations," especially because we discovered it's a different hack. It's the vote banks. And so many problems. The first and foremost, the election equipment is housed in the far right ecosystem. That's problematic. We found the vote banks. We can see where they're swapping the data. So we need these investigations opened into Elon Musk, everybody affiliated with Doge that was doing things with the election, ES&S, the election equipment company, Dominion, the election equipment company, DDHQ, which is the reporting system. That's where the attack vector is occurring. It's occurring post tabulation. So when these states are
Let me
doing audits,
let
they're
me
coming.
let me let me set you up for the question. So the audience, you're heading on part three of our conversation.
Oh,
So the
okay.
audience know where we're at. You argue the privatization of the election equipment has a long history. Can you explain the history that ties between voting company like
Sequoia.
Sequoia and political networks linked to the far right organization?
Yes. So Sequoia, just think of them as Dominion because Dominion absorbed that company. But when I say that it's been like this since the beginning, the company that was ES&S, that is ES&S, originally when they first started, they were funded by the Amundsen brothers. The Amundsen brothers are tied to the Council for National Policy. That is a far right organization with the Koch brothers, the Heritage Foundation. Um, what's the youngster one now that Charlie was over? Turning Point, the
Turning
Federal,
Point USA.
all of those groups are housed within that Council for National Policy. Within it's a giant octopus is the best way to describe it. So they've got, ties to the Amundsen brothers, to these far right networks. One of the brothers himself was just very much Old Testament, believes religion should be in schools, no, no rights for women. I mean, hardcore far rightists, right? So that is where the that's their foundation, that's their roots. And then every time a company becomes problematic, has problems, is getting investigated by the DOJ, which is exactly what happened in 1979. That company that became ES&S came under investigation under the Carter administration for bribery and all kinds of other election hijinks, electronic issues. And the president of the company at the time, once Reagan got into office, is going around joking and telling people, "Oh, I used to joke that we had to get Reagan in office to get this thing, to get this investigation killed." Well, that's exactly what happened. Reagan took office, and in 1981, they dismissed the investigation against these guys. So, it's just very much a thank you very much. You tap my back, I'll pat yours. And here we are. So Sequoia is the company that in 2000 had all the issues with the Bush election. And because they were such a problematic company and there were so many lawsuits and there were so many problems, Dominion bought them. And so what we see is this, it just keeps happening. These companies swallow each other up and wipe the slate clean, but they leave all the election equipment in place. And it's just happened again, Dominion with all the problems that, they were dealing with. And now Liberty has bought Dominion. Where's the equipment? In the same place. They're not changing anything other than the name. So,
So they
oh,
get in trouble. They end up having some sort of drama. And then because of that drama, they get another company to buy them, and they switch the name from that first company to another company. They use the same equipment. They patch them with different technologies so they can fuck up with the vote however they want. And you and I are the ones paying the price. You say that there are numbers that doesn't add up. Before we go to financial backing questions, can we go over those numbers that don't add up? You guys went a couple states where you went over the voting numbers, and could you go over some of the numbers in some of those states for the audiences so they can also have a good understanding of what that sounds like?
well, the biggest problem that we came across is that what the states were certifying as official records, their state official records are not matching the county and precinct numbers. And so that was another red flag. And that was across all of the swing states. That was another red flag. So ideally, your reporting goes up to the state level and it should match all the way down. And so as we're adding all of it up, like there's a county in Pennsylvania that 454% of the voters, like it says that ballots cast were 454% of the voters. You can't have more than 100%. That's impossible. So why, if so let's say you have 100 people that were supposed to vote, but 140 voted, where did those other 40 ballots come from? Because they shouldn't exist, right? There should only be 100 voters. And so we kept coming across those situations and continued to dig further. And that's really kind of how we ended up in this whole mess, is finding all of these anomalies and all of these problems. And then the ETA launched a lawsuit in Pennsylvania, which unfortunately was dismissed, which we had a feeling it would be, but to question those things, because you can't have more people voting than even requested ballots. And then again, their numbers don't come anywhere near. matching what the state says is their official record. And of course, we found a vote bank as well in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, of all the states, was the worst. It just had so many problems. Oops.
Have you published an article with the actual physical numbers for these states?
Yes, we've
Would you
published.
mind sending that to me after this podcast so I could share it and read it? Because I think that that alone is worth looking into.
Sure.
I think also my audience. I told you my audience is mostly looking for facts. They're not looking for the news opinions. So
Right.
if you had
Yeah, we're
published
very
that, then if
data
you'd done the work, my audience is definitely interested in reading that.
for sure. We are very data oriented. Like we don't make grand, statements unless we can back it up. So even when we discuss the technology and what happened with Elon Musk, we have experts on the team that frankly, one of them, before the elections even happened, came to me in March or April of 2024 when he was watching what Elon Musk was building. And I guess this probably goes into the next section, but he told me before the election that Elon Musk was going to steal the election. And I just kind of was like, oh, come on. And he
Wait,
said,
wait,
no,
who told you?
look,
Who told you what? Who told who what?
one of my techs with the Common Coalition, because we've got several guys who are, and women actually, who are tech experts. And
Uh-huh.
the speed at which Elon Musk was building this low Earth orbit direct to cell satellite system, it should have taken him over 2 years to build, and he got it up in the sky.
I saw that in the article. That's right.
Yeah, and so that tech came to me and I believe it was March, I could look up my notes, March or April, and he was like, "I really think that Elon Musk is gonna try to steal the election." And I didn't laugh him off because I've always thought that Elon Musk was dirty, but I was like, "Come on, you think?" And he was like, "Yeah." He's like, I can't think of another reason why he would be pushing so hard to get this network established this fast. Like it's costing him at least double, if not triple, what it would cost to just lay it out normally in the 2 year time span. But he's got all the money in the world, so why not?
That's interesting. Well,
Which
let's
to question 4.
yeah, the financial backing plays a major role in your report. How did billionaire Barry said
Side.
and side and judicial strategist Leonardo Leo coordinate the trust to influence both the courts and the political landscape. At this point, we should just throw Elon Musk in that question as well.
Right. So Barry's side and Leonard Leo represent the dark money side of the system. Side is a 94-year-old tech billionaire who has no children to pass his wealth on to. And so he gifted a company by the name of Trip Light to Leonard Leo's Marble Trust Foundation. I'm sorry, Marble Freedom Trust. And he did it that way to avoid having to pay taxes. So this company, Trip Light, is most of us just consider it to be an electronics technology company. Well, they have access to over 70% of the election equipment because they service both Dominion and ES&S. And so rather than selling directly to Eaton, he gifted the company to Leonard Leo's Marble Freedom, and then Leonard turned around and sold it to Eaton. Well, being a new, the way taxes work, since it was a gift, they didn't have to pay capital gains on that money. So that 400 million, he sold it for 1.65 billion, which he would have had to have paid about 400 million in taxes on that. But he avoided that entirely. And so that full 1.65 billion went to Leonard Leo to continue what he's been doing in the judicial system and screwing with democracy, bottom line. But then it also handed Eaton Corporation access to 70% of our election equipment. And the reason that that's so important is because Eaton was already partners with Peter Thiel and Palantir. And then in May of that year, I believe it was May, they decided to deepen their partnership in 2024. And, they're discussing secure erasure of digital footprints and all these things that are making the bells and whistles go off. And then in August, fast forward a few months, they partnered with Elon Musk. So a company that has access to 70% of the election equipment is now partners with Elon Musk just months before the election. And that should have been something that had been investigated long before now, before we started talking about it, a little over a year ago, we discovered this piece. And um, like I said, 18 months. And so we've been, pushing the data out and trying to get it there. But by handing it off that way, what Leonard Leo's been able to do as far as the Federalist Society, I mean, he and Mitch McConnell, they just decided to start blocking legislation. So rather than letting Congress legislate, they start inventing cases to go in front of judges to get them, fast tracked up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court decides which cases they want to work on. They want to, give decisions on, and they're reshaping our political landscape instead of by passing laws, by fast tracking stuff up to the Supreme Court. And a perfect example of that, hold on, I wrote down the name of this case. Do you remember when the gay website case, the supposed, it was 303 Creative LLC versus Elenis, and it was a woman who didn't want to do a website for a gay couple, and it got all
Yes,
the way
I
up.
remember.
Remember that?
Was it a website or a cake?
It was a
That's a
website.
different that's a Colorado, different place, a cake.
He didn't want to create a website for this guy who supposedly was getting married to a man. And so it got all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, basically was like, yeah, you can discriminate. Sure, go right ahead. So protections that we had already had in place were then ripped away. Well, then an investigator digs at the root of the story and finds the guy that it was supposedly about, calls him up and says, hey, how do you feel about, losing at the Supreme Court? The dude had no idea what he was talking about. He's like, bro, I'm married, I'm straight, I've been married over 20 years. And if I wanted to be gay and have a website for my big gay wedding, I'd make it
Oh my
myself.
god, the whole lawsuit was fake.
It was all fake. He's like, I am a website developer. If I wanted a big gay wedding website, I'd make it myself. So the whole thing was fake. All of it.
Shut up.
No, 100%. So that's what they're doing. They're creating these cases in the lower
What the
court
fuck?
and fast tracking them up to the Supreme Court. And because Federalist Society judges are sitting on the Supreme Court, they could have said, no, we're not going to take
So
that
who
case.
made it up?
The gal, the 303 Creative, I've forgotten her name, but the name of her company was 303 Creative. And she supposedly was so disturbed by having to do something that goes against her religion. She doesn't want to have to create a gay website. And they got it all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, it's okay, honey, you don't have to. And then it's totally fake. The whole thing was not even real. So that's what I
Okay.
mean by they're reshaping our laws. And for that case, there's so many other examples of things that they're doing.
My viewers are asking, some of them are professors and some of them are PhDs, or holding PhD. They're very interested in your research methodology. What are you guys doing for your research methodology, and from where are you getting your data?
We get the data, you mean for the actual, well, we just dig. If it's an investigative piece, we just dig and dig and dig until we follow the money, whatever we can find. As far as the data, we go to the cast vote records of the states that allow us to see the data, to see that. And then as far as the fake counties, what we did was we just started adding and subtracting numbers because we could see the fake counties and we could see the numbers that were in the fake counties. And so we got screenshots of all of those. And then we just started adding and subtracting numbers within the totals of the states to get to the bottom of where those numbers were coming from because we knew they had to be tied. And so once we figured out in Florida, the number was like 6,370,614, something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. But when we added up the Democrats and the Republicans' early vote totals, it was the exact same number as what was in the fake vote bank. And so they're using a variable that they know in advance. They knew what that number was going to be before the election, and they're using that variable that they know in advance as the fake county vote bank. And so they did the same. We've proven it in Georgia and also in Michigan. And now we just finished Nevada. I'll be posting the Nevada report. Um, if not Friday, then Monday or Tuesday of next week. So
You
we
know,
just did.
I do you guys add the methodology in your research documents at the bottom for people to read it, or at the beginning of the research to let people know where you got your data from and stuff?
Yes,
Perfect. So when
we
I
show everything.
share that article with the data stuff, I'll be able to have the methodology in there for everyone. That's perfect. Um, where's the DNC? You said the far right is involved, the establishment is involved, the billionaires are involved. What is the DNC doing in all this shit? Why aren't they stopping it? Are they part of the whole conspiracy?
They are, unfortunately. So that's another, as we've built this platform in this Substack, we have been, grateful to have a lot of whistleblowers come forward and decide to tell their stories on our platform. One of which, several of which actually last year were involved in an NSA authorized audit of the 2024 election. And in July at the time, and his name's Adam, uh, came forward and told us that the NSA had authorized an election audit and that Kamala Harris had won in a landslide. And he is a former CIA agent who worked in the human trafficking sector. And he said that the report was buried by the powers that be. And he said, not involving Harris, Biden, or Governor Walz, but that the Democrats and the Republicans both buried the audit because it was tied to the Epstein files. And then I verified that with other members of that audit team, and one of which was, even further entrenched. And he basically told me, he said, when the Epstein files are made public, because eventually they will be, you'll see very few handful of people control the entire world. And those people are in the Epstein files. So they cannot allow a Kamala Harris
And
DOJ.
now they're in dialogue as well. 300 to 500 individuals, total members in dialogue. The
Yeah.
actual Illuminati. I don't know if you heard of it, but yeah.
Yeah. So, of course, the files dropped in December, and there we see Larry Ellison's son, David. And of course, they're buying up all the media and kicking people off the TikTok platform that talk about the elections or the Epstein files. And now they've bought CBS, and they're just it's just a far right takeover of everything. Our elections, our media, all of it. And of course, we've got people who, want to try to discredit us. The minute someone starts saying it's not real, I mean, we literally lay out the math. I always try to find how they're benefiting. Either they benefited
Yeah.
from an election.
What do you tell people who are saying that you're a conspiracy theorist at this point?
Look at the data, look at the math. We proved it. I mean, we literally proved it in the math. And so if it's first and foremost, if it's a Republican, I don't trust the thing that Republicans say, and I don't care if they've reformed and they're not Trumpers or whatever. They're still Republican. They still vote against basic human rights. They still don't think that the LGBTQ community deserves to have rights. They're still terrible people. Just because they're not Trumpers, they're still voting against human rights. Period. So I just don't trust Republicans as a rule. So, but Republicans have been benefiting from these stolen elections literally since Reagan. So I just take everything with a grain of salt when they come out of the woodwork. And then we do have some Democrats that push back. And again, the number of Democrats that are in the Epstein files, Reid Hoffman is one of the Democrats' largest donors. He's in the Epstein files. So there are ties in the Epstein files to the Supreme Court. Neil Gorsuch bought a property for $10 million that he sold 10 months later for $76 million. He made $66 million to a dude who was in the Epstein files. I mean, it's just the corruption is just so deep. And the only way we get out of it is for states to wake up and start auditing.
So the
So,
Democrats are in on it. Uh, the Republicans are in on it. I've been telling my viewers that the establishment doesn't care about you.
right.
They care about keeping the status quo. They don't care about labor unions. They don't care about uh, income equality. They don't care about housing. They don't care about the infrastructure. But what
Yeah.
they care about is insider trading. What they care about is staying in that office as long as possible because as long as they're in the hot office, they have insider information. Based on that, they do insider trading and they become millionaires or billionaires in the US Congress just using insider trading. They have not done it or passed any laws or regulations to end that.
Yeah.
Um, I
I
wanted
mean,
to ask
even look
you,
at
go for
Mark
it.
Mark Elias. Look at Mark Elias, right? He's this big DNC lawyer, fighter for justice. He's got 66 cases in litigation right now. And I'm not accusing him of anything. I'm just asking people to think critically. Mark Elias told Kamala Harris that she didn't have standing or she didn't have grounds and talked her out of pursuing a recount. He did the same thing to Hillary Clinton. There were only 77,000 votes between Hillary Clinton and Trump. And she had experts in her ear, the same experts who are around today, telling her that they had proof of manipulation in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. And she decided to walk. And whether they thought that was to protect the institution, that they didn't want people, getting
Could you
nervous.
repeat that again? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
So
Sorry, that went too
77,000
fast.
77,000 votes separated her and Trump. And she had experts telling her we have evidence of manipulation in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. And Mark Elias told her to stand down. And she did not request a recount and she did not move forward. And so, whether they did that to protect the institution, I don't know. I can't hypothesize on what their reasons were for doing it, but I'm going to throw another curveball here because in 2004, when John Kerry chose not to challenge what happened in Ohio, guess who talked him out of challenging in Ohio was also Mark Elias. So we have Mark Elias in 2004. In
Who the
2006,
fuck is Mark Elias? I need to look them up.
democracy docket. And so I'm not saying that he did anything untoward. I'm just saying, as a scientist, because my background is science and behavior, if he is making a killing off of being the DNC's lawyer. And I have a hairy eyeball, our team has a hairy eyeball for anybody who makes more money when the GOP is at the helm. As a woman of color, we die more when the GOP is at the helm. So this is big for us. Like we saw like how's this dude across all three elections that needed to be questioned telling them not to question it on behalf of the DNC because he's their lawyer. So when I say the DNC is complicit, that's what I mean. And
Got
he
it.
appears as a big fighter
It's
against.
not the whole party.
Got to think
There
about
are
how much.
some there are some people that seem to be complicit. That seem to be not seem. There's good evidence to show that they are complicit.
I mean, it's
But there
complete.
are other people who are getting whipped through these complicit people to stay in line. And what we mean by whip it is the strategy of the House and the Senate to put your other parties in line, and they usually have a member of the House and the Senate for each party that they call a whip. And that person's job is to make sure that they're put everyone in the party in line.
Right,
And to see someone actually taking that role, but not in terms of what they vote for, but whether they should back off on whether they want to file for an investigation on whether their election needs to be looked on their election votes need to be looked at or not.
right.
You're giving
Well,
me a lot to think today.
it's a lot to cover, unfortunately, and
It's not just a lot to cover; it's a lot to process.
for sure.
Like yeah, no, it is a lot to like because I've read. I read the article you wrote, but hearing it from you in person, it is a little bit different because you get to hear some more of the nuances that it's not as easy to explain on a research paper. You wanted to say something and I cut you off. I apologize.
I have chemo brain, so whatever it was is gone. I don't remember. So
My apologies. Uh,
that's
The
okay.
the the article connects the 2024 election to the transnational organized crime syndicate, referring to Donald Trump's historical ties to Russia and the oligarchs and the network surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. How do
Yes.
these three elements um, interact with each other, and how do they specifically interact with the U.S. election?
So we have known for a long time, and I'm a veteran, so even longer than most, that Donald Trump is a Russian asset. So when he ran for office in 2016 and 2015, when he announced his run, we, those of us that were still in the service, were really shocked that he was even being allowed to run because we knew he was a Russian asset. So immediately we already knew something was wrong. Um, and then you just look at how the 2016 election played out, where it was July of 2016. And remember the Hey Russia, if you're listening, I hope you can find those 30,000
Oh yes, I remember that.
she was hacked that day, like the same day that he made that statement. The Russians went
She
after
was
her.
hacked. I remember.
They had already released some things, but then you fast forward, and we see now through the Epstein files even more. But if you remember, on the day that the Access Hollywood tape, you know, was released, the day that grab him by the uh, was
Uh huh.
released, that same day, the Wikipedia leaks and all of that started going off. The same, I actually wrote this down. I have a time. So October 7th, again, that date is so ominous. The tape became public. WikiLeaks began publishing the stolen Podesta emails. That's what it was. And that was from 4 to 4:30 to 5 o'clock. So within an hour time span of that happening, then here come the WikiLeaks situation. What we found out from the Epstein files is that Epstein and Peter Thiel and the Russian handler, whose name I've written down because I always butcher how to say it. Where is it? Um, Hold on. Anyways, they all had lunch
Take
that
your
day.
time. You don't need to rush yourself. No one is in a rush here.
They all had lunch that day. So, you had Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid freaking out and asking for investigations. When all this went down, he asked and actually demanded that the head of the FBI, James Comey, resign or get fired because he
That's
felt
right.
like purposely, you know, made Hillary Clinton vulnerable and that something was wrong. And so on October 7th, Peter Thiel and Epstein and the Russian ambassador, Churkin, that's his name. I can't believe I have such a hard time remembering that dude. We're having lunch. I'm sure probably discussing the tape and how they were going to combat it. I wasn't there, obviously, but what are the odds that that same day, October 7th, that all that stuff happens? And then as we get further into the Epstein files, we see that pretty much from 2014 forward, Epstein and Peter Thiel are working in concert to boost Russia. I mean, they're pro Russia over here, and
Why didn't Obama do anything about that? I mean, like Trump was asking Russia to hack Hillary's email. The Russians hacked Hillary's email. The
right,
one in office is Obama.
right.
Why didn't the motherfucker do anything about it?
See, that's where we get into this playing by the rules situation because Democrats, what Trump is doing right now, using the DOJ to go after people, that's not supposed to be happening. They're supposed to be separate. So, yes, it was Obama's administration, but James Comey was at the head of the FBI at the time. He was acting in opposite of that. Like he was the one that announced that they were investigating Hillary right before the election. And we're all sitting here like, what the fuck? Pardon my language. But it just looked like a move to torpedo Hillary.
I mean,
And
we all said what the fuck at the time, but
yeah, yeah,
genuinely, if I am the president
right,
and I see a foreign country using their
right.
fucking spies, they're using their intelligence to interfere in my election. You don't think I'm gonna go appear in front of the whole country in the White House and the Oval Office? I will do the president sitting down. Dear US citizens, I have, we have, our intelligence agency have noticed that the Russians have hacked our voting arenas and have hacked Hillary Clinton. And for that, we will take executive action of immediate investigation into the situation. What the fuck is wrong with that?
Yeah. Well, the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence did investigate, and they found that Russia did, in fact, hack our elections, and they were successful in all of the states getting infiltration. What they
Okay,
then
they did the investigation.
they did, but then they said, but they weren't successful. Supposedly, we're supposed to believe that they weren't successful in hijacking.
What do you mean they weren't? They weren't successful in hijacking Hillary Clinton's email.
Right? No, they were successful in her email. They gained access to our election equipment in all 50 states. And
In
the center,
addition to
yeah,
Hillary's email, they access our election.
trust them.
Not
We're on Trust Me Bros.
not Elon Musk this time. This is 2016.
Yep,
This is Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump. Obama was president. The Donald Trump came on stage and said hack Hillary Clinton's email. We already covered that. Comes to
right.
the U.S. election. How did the fuck the Russians hack our
Yeah. They
equipment?
inf they infiltrated our registrations, they infiltrated the equipment itself. Um, all of this came out in the Senate Select Committee of Intelligence report, but then they gave us the trust me bro status. They weren't successful in actually hijacking the election. They were just able to get into our election system. And so we were supposed to believe that. But we saw the election equipment go haywire in Michigan. We know they infiltrated 59% of the election equipment failing in black and brown neighborhoods in Michigan, in Wayne County. That's not an accident. And if you follow the through line, it keeps happening. It happened in Pennsylvania in black and brown communities. Election equipment just stops working. It happened actually in Texas in the Democratic primary. Jasmine Crockett and Tallarico, there were issues with the equipment, again, in Democratic areas. It never seems to be the Republicans' votes who are infected. It's always the Democrats. And so here we are still using all the same equipment that's not only already been infiltrated by Russia, but also infiltrated by Donald Trump and his players in 2020 when they went and grabbed all the election equipment in Georgia and Michigan and Arizona, Colorado. Tina Peters, who's now been released from prison, went to prison for giving them access. We're still using that equipment. So again, we're just not mad enough. And maybe it's because media won't cover it that we don't know any
No,
better.
no, 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 no. Let me tell you something. When Trump goes and he's a conspiracy theorist, right? And there's QAnon and there's all of this other shit with the far right. And 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 we really are very, very, very allergic to conspiracy theories for a good reason. But when you hear a group keep saying the election was stolen, the election was stolen, the election was stolen, you don't think they're talking about your side. You think they're only talking about their own side. So once like you are talking about it, but you're saying, wait a minute, it's not just the Republicans, it's also the Democrats. But maybe the Republicans may not be actually complaining about their own thing. They're complaining about an actual thing that's happening to the Democrats. Has it happened to the Republicans? You haven't
Nope.
seen any there is no mathematical evidence anywhere that
Oh, there
the
is now.
elections was stolen for the Republican from the Republicans to the Democrats. Is there any evidence that shows that the Republicans lost an election from a democratic interference rather than the other way around?
Right. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up because LBJ stole his Senate seat. So Democrats' hands are not clean. I can assure you of that. And then in these primaries, we saw manipulation on the Republican side. You know, Donald Trump backed up 118 candidates. He had 118 candidates that he endorsed. All 118 won. Every single candidate that Donald Trump endorsed won. That, and we can see the data. We know they manipulated the elections. We know Thomas Massey didn't lose. So it's just, again, it's tied to Trump and his administration. But I think the part that I want people to focus on, because I know this is so disheartening to hear, is that we can actually get out of this. You know, the states can do things to get out of this. And the reason that they couldn't let Kamala Harris take the presidency is because she's a bird of a different color or feather, however you ever say that, bird of a different feather. Yes, feather.
What you
This
mean?
well, she was a lifelong prosecutor. She never flipped to the other side of the courtroom. She never sat at the other table and collected a check over there. And while she was in office in California, she prosecuted sex trafficking rings. She went
Mhm.
after, oh, what was the name of that company? As Attorney General, she actually went after a company for sex trafficking, and they eventually ended up getting shut down. Like she went after the big people, the bad shit she saw in California and prosecuted. So, and she got legislation passed to make certain things felonies, so increasing asset forfeiture from traffickers, um, more restitution to victims, strengthen the penalties for the crime of sex trafficking. I mean, she went toe to toe with these people, and so for her to get vaulted up to the White House, she's not going to sit there and be like, "Yeah, sure, keep being a pedophile." And keep trafficking young girls. And in 2014, I'm trying to think, it was a joint investigation with Homeland Security and a huge trafficking ring. They ended up busting up there. So literally this is like her life's work, right? And so she's going to be sitting at the top and her DOJ is going to come to power. Well, the pedophiles in the Epstein files weren't about to let that happen. So that's when the audit came out in November, December of 2024. That's the reason it was buried. Because now that we can see Reid Hoffman and, um, the David Ellison, and the Mellon family. I mean, come on, the Matthew Mellon is in there. There's there's dialogue of him with a 13-year-old, the Mellon family, the banking Mellon family. So Timothy Mellon donated $150 million dollars to Trump's campaign. They don't want all this stuff coming out. They don't want people going to prison. I mean, that's what we're doing here. We're protecting pedophiles. So Kamala Harris would have gotten in there. She would have handled the business. She would have continued, Biden's infrastructure and built on his platforms. She did not like Netanyahu, and I know that people, don't do their homework and look up what her stance
Well,
was.
I think I
Well, they-
spoke about that on my podcast. I think the
Yeah.
reason she lost a lot of the Muslim Arabic vote in the United States or the younger vote is because she did not make it clear.
But she did. That's what's so frustrating. She's on camera and media didn't cover it. She called it a genocide. She went toe to toe with Netanyahu. She skipped
Oh
out when
no, they didn't want to hear just a genocide. They what I told my people, and that's because I'm from Saudi Arabia. And I speak a lot with Arabs and I interact a lot with the Arab community. And the feedback I literally got is she didn't say I stand with Palestine and I'm against what this side. They wanted to hear names. They wanted to hear she's against what Israel is doing and she's going to stand with Palestine. That
I'll send you a
particular
video.
statement,
Yeah, I'll
okay.
send you a video of her because she is like, we cannot look away from what is happening in Palestine. This is a genocide. We cannot continue to, this cannot go on. They can't block aid. They're blocking humanitarian aid. We cannot give them offensive weapons. I mean, she is very clear on her stance. And when Netanyahu came to town, she's like, "Peace, man, I'm out." She didn't even show for him coming to Congress. She met with him separately, and again, I understand that the media didn't
I
cover enough.
I supported Kamala Harris. Don't take me wrong. I supported
Yeah,
Kamala Harris. There's nothing. I'm not against her. I'm just telling you the actual feedback.
yeah,
They saw that comment. They saw that comment, and
that
for
she could,
them,
yeah,
that wasn't enough. For them, that one comment wasn't enough. They wanted it to be repeated. They wanted it to be a part of her campaign. They wanted it to be part of her message. They wanted to be part of like the to-do list. So like that they wanted more than that statement, and I remember that statement. Please send it to me. I would like it regardless. But
yeah,
me talking to my Arabic community and Muslim community,
they
I
wanted.
that's the they wanted a lot more
Well, so back to
because
how.
they heard something similar. They heard something similar from George Bush from before 9/11, not about Palestine, but about like Muslim communities having their own freedom in the United States. And then 9/11 happened, and the exact opposite happened. All of a sudden, all the Muslim communities are potential terrorists and potential extremists. So they've seen promises by U.S. politicians, and for something like Palestine, they wanted something a little bit more hardcore. But I definitely stood with this. Actually, takes me to my next question.
Okay,
Why let some win and others lose? Is there like an algorithm that is at this point could give us a good idea of
right.
who would these people would let win and who would they let lose? Yesterday or the day before yesterday, my memory is going short here. Mamdani and, the day before yesterday, like, not last night, the night before. Mamdani and has nominated 3 people, not nominated, like, endorsed 3 people,
And they all won.
and they all won.
Yep.
Is this where these companies think there's something that, "Oh, Mamdani's not really gonna get those really win," and they don't pay attention to it? Or do they actually have a system where they go after specific people?
They have a system. And if you notice, if you look at how Congress, the numbers in Congress, Republican policy is not popular. It has not been popular since Reagan. And so we know they're not going to win on policy. But if you look at how Congress is, comprised, Democrats can never seem to get enough seats to actually get anything done for the American people. It's a very delicate 50-50 balance. We're always within one or two votes of being able to get what the American people actually need. And we all end up just stomping our feet and say, "Oh, shucks, we'll get them next time." They're doing that on purpose. It's controlled opposition. They're losing on purpose. And so, or when they manage to get a Democrat in office, then it turns to Congress and it's like, okay, we've got just this number of people to get things done. When you look at what happened with Trump getting back in, of course we know they stole the election, but they were working on the Project 2025, reset, what they're calling it. And so they stole the seats they needed in Congress as well to get this Project 2025 garbage through. Now look at how many Democrats voted for, like, the Lake and Riley Act. We knew what the Lake and Riley Act was gonna do. To me, like, if I had to
What
be
was it gonna do? I don't remember that,
interviewed,
I apologize.
going to give ICE the power it needed to just throw people into concentration
Oh,
camps.
that's
We
right.
knew
That's right.
coming. So there was, like, I haven't talked about this in a minute, but the number of Democrats that voted for the Lake and Riley Act, I was blown away at that. And so to me, those are people that if I was leading an investigation, I would be pulling those members of Congress in and subpoenaing their transmissions, their text messages, and their conversations to see who was told you will win your seat so long as you support these pieces of legislation. because to me, that's what had to happen. I don't understand. Democrats know better. We knew what the Lake and Riley Act was going to do. We knew that due process was going out the window if that bill passed. And it was something I want to say like 67 Democrats ended up voting for it. So, what's up? I want to know. I I'm not about to become an investigator like for real, but if I was one, that's what I would be doing. And so that leads, I think, into the next point of people just holding on to their hope because we can get out of this. We can go to the states and if we're loud enough, get state attorneys general to open investigations. And then when I say, and I think this is one of the questions that you asked, that we need to take unprecedented action, I mean, back to the day of the founding of this country and what we did to even become the United States, we have to be willing to work just as hard because justice is not served unless there are consequences. And so when it comes to the Supreme Court, we can roll back the clock. We can impeach Supreme Court justices, but that's civil. We need criminal charges. If Clarence
Yeah.
Thomas was taking bribes all those years, which he was, and there is a way to prosecute him criminally, do it. If the same thing
But
with Kavanaugh, how did all of Kavanaugh's debt get paid off all of a sudden? Who paid it off? If there's a way to prosecute him criminally, do it. John Roberts, $20 million in his pocket for observing cases that his wife got paid for having lawyers in front of the court over the course of a decade. $20 million. If we can prosecute that shit, do it. Pardon my language. Same thing with Gorsuch. He's got a thing on record, a real estate transaction on record where he bought a piece of property 10 months for $10 million. 10 months later, sold it to a Russian oligarch who I think has Swedish citizenship now. Whatever. Made $66 million on this deal with this Russian dude. Give me a break. If there's something untoward in there, investigate it. Put him in prison, but get them all off the bench because they are the judicial byproduct of a stolen election in 2016. None of them should be sitting there. Get them all out. We can do this. We can do the
do
same
you
thing with
do you
judges.
guys do you guys have a call to action in your group where you after you do um I would like to get to that call of action, but I want it because it is a call of action. I want it to be the last thing because I want that to stick in everyone's minds. Like that's the last message I want them to take. So I'm gonna get to you regarding the call of action, and it is important after you collect all of that information, or after you have all of that knowledge, after you now know that shit is messed up you wanna do something about it, and it makes sense. So, I wanna get to that in 1 second, but there's a couple questions from the audience. Are you available for some questions?
Yeah, of course.
Oh,
Hopefully I
we
can because again, my team I have 62 on my team and they're the experts. So
no
I just
worries, and
uh,
if that means that we have to wait for that answer and we'll give them a written one, we'll give them the answer in written. You don't have to answer a question that you don't know, we'll get the answer to them later, that's okay. My cash flow collective is someone that usually follows the money and is big on numbers. He says auditors operate under a formal oversight in the U.S. Public companies auditors are inspected and regulated by the PCAOB, Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, which sets audit standards, inspectors, registered firm, and can investigate and discipline them. Any connections about an auditor can be raised directly with the PCAOB. Are there auditors involved in the current under investigation? When was the issue first raised? And who and with whom has it been formally reported to the PCAOB or the relevant oversight body? And what has the response been so far?
we have reported this to governmental to the state attorneys general. We've sent it directly to members of Congress. Um, in terms of auditing, I don't know if he's talking about financial auditing or election auditing.
He's
That's
saying he's saying there's an auditing organization called the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, and their job is to audit uh, auditors to make sure that the
yeah.
auditors are not fucking up. Have
Yeah.
have
So
have there been any of those auditors reported to the PCAOB?
this is
And
actually different than he's talking about something different. This says the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board oversees the audits of public companies and SEC registered brokers and dealers. So for public companies, we're not auditing public companies. We're auditing, well, I mean, I guess technically it would
you
be like,
could audit the two private companies that are running the.
yeah, ES&S and Dominion, but we would need to open investigations. So like the DOJ in the states would need to be opening investigations. I guess we could just try to go the financial route and have them look into,
Yeah, that's not a bad idea at all. That's coming from someone that follows the money.
yeah, that down real quick. Um,
PCAOB, the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board.
yeah, and see if we can get something done on that side of things versus pushing so hard for the investigations. But again, we have ways out of this. And beyond that, we can also ask the states, look, we've got 4 months, okay, before the midterms. Every single state has a backup voting contingency plan. And that backup voting contingency plan is paper ballots. And so if we can't get them to open investigations, then we can get loud and we can go to our state legislators and say, pass a bill that removes the election equipment, that removes the reporting systems, and y'all get tons of volunteers. And we just go old school like we did before these systems existed. Is it going to take longer to get the vote? We used to call the vote in. It used to be you went, you voted, everything got counted manually. It was a paper ballot. You put a mark on the people that you wanted. You placed your ballot in the box. They took the box to the room where they did the counting. They tallied everything up. And then whoever was its job was to call and in the reporting numbers is what they did. And we just need to go back to that system of reporting and voting until we can either get open source election equipment and this, so we're not doing this whole proprietary software garbage, or we just go back like Canada does to paper ballots and old school like we used to, because you can't hack a paper ballot. Elon Musk is on record saying that repeatedly. So
So
no, they know what's up because they're stealing them.
Follow the Cash is telling you going to the PCAOB is inspectors. You would be going through a formal route. And I also took going directly to the PCAOB is a formal route of legally reporting them.
Okay.
He also recommended filing a police report. I took a screenshot of all of the things that he recommended, and I sent it to you to your WhatsApp, not WhatsApp, to your Signal.
Signal.
So you'll have a screenshot of all of the things that he recommended. Now, remote, the route motion sounds like speaking directly to legislature. That does not sound right to me. Yeah, he's saying you shouldn't have to go and directly speak to legislators. There should be a different way than dealing with this outside of the legislators' way,
Well,
but
the only
I
way
think
that we
I'm
can
just
get
gonna recommend his account as well. I'm gonna take a
Well,
picture
the
of his
only way
account
that
and
we
send
can
it to you.
get the election equipment removed is legally is through the legislators. The state legislators either have to pass legislation that says we're not going to use this voting equipment anymore. We're changing our election laws and it's now going to be paper ballots, hand count, either that or the governors, if it takes too long to get the state legislators to do that, Governors can enforce their emergency powers and say and sign, executive orders, and they can do the same. They just have to be willing to say, I consider our election situation to be an emergency. I'm declaring an executive order, and we're removing the election equipment and we're going back to paper ballots. That's the only way we can do that. That doesn't have anything
Did
to
you
do with these auditors.
did you guys reach out to Kamala?
Oh, yeah, of course. We've
What
reached
did
out to
she say?
literally one. We've not heard back. We actually have, well, frankly, I mean, she went on a podcast, I believe it was Joy Reid, and Joy asked her, she said, "Do you think that Trump won?" And she said, "I do." So, it's really hard to be on this side of things and saying, "We know he didn't win," when the person who actually ran for office is saying that he did. It puts us in a very difficult position, but we
Yeah,
know
that does put you in. She did concede by the end of the day.
he conceded. But I cannot tell you, we were around Republicans all the time. They consider winning by cheating still winning. And their whole mindset is if you're too stupid to not question what we did, then we won. Like that's their mindset. It doesn't matter that they cheated to win. That's how they think. And so it doesn't matter that their win came about because they stole the election. We were the wusses who didn't do anything to prevent it, to investigate it, to overturn it. So in their minds, they won. And maybe she's viewing it from that perspective because we know Mark Elias told her, not to proceed with the recount. And the same experts that were warning Hillary Clinton were also warning Kamala Harris that they had evidence of manipulation. I mean, there were so many letters, duty to warn letters written, asking, please, please, this election equipment has been manipulated and you've got to open an investigation. You've got to ask for a recount. And they didn't. And so now we know it's tied to the Epstein files, and we, the people, have to be the ones to push this effort forward. It's really the only way we get out of this. But there's a light at the end of the tunnel, y'all. There is. I want your viewers to understand that now that all of this has bubbled to the surface, I wrote a article called "The Octopus." Now that we know how all of this is tied together and how many people are involved and how bad and how deep this rot goes, we can roll over this log and get it all out. And that's where we are now. That's what we're doing.
What is your call to action, T?
The call to action is call. Calls go so much further than emails and go in person. So we've got so much traction now because Ashley St. Clair came forward and talked about Elon Musk and his role and what he did. And so, or what she thinks he did, his lasers from space. We know he put that network up there in 10 months. We know all the things that happened on October 30th. We know Republicans were involved. The call to action is get in front of your state attorneys general and your secretaries of state, give them our articles, tell them what happened. We have mathematical proof that they did it, and get loud. We need millions of people demanding investigations into the 2024 election, into Elon Musk, into Rupert Murdoch, into Peter Thiel, into DDHQ, ESNS, Dominion. I will just do a whole call to action post and I'll just make it that. It won't even be an article. It'll just be this is the call to action. This is who to call. Here are their phone numbers. We put phone numbers and everything at the end of our articles, but we will do that just so that everybody has it and just start calling. I've been in those legislators' offices, and I've talked about this before. When in DC, when the phones are ringing and constituents are mad about a piece of legislation, and they have to run over and write, physically mark down how many times they're getting calls about things. The louder we are, and the angrier we are, and the more we show up, and the more we demand accountability, the more it's going to happen. It's going to take millions of us to do it, but this is their job. They are there to represent
Do
us.
you
We the people. It's our power that they are representing us.
do you guys have a script for people to read when they call their representative?
We do. I'll put that on there as well.
Perfect. Perfect, perfect. I recommend seeing if you could collaborate with David Hogg and the organization that he's with. especially that they're focused a lot on election and they're focused a lot on getting people out to vote and having that type of support would transform your work, I think, and push it forward. Um, I definitely think we should have the organization or look into the PCAOB as an option to see if they can do something. If not, that's okay, but at least we knock every door that we can knock.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
you
I'll
miss
definitely have
100%
my
of
team look into
yeah.
that for sure.
Yeah, I definitely think that's not a bad idea. And let's see if we can get a university to do a study on this. Like getting a university name, getting this published on not medical, on academic papers can make a difference. Just because if there is a lot of talk about this is just conspiracy theories floating around, even though that you've done the work that you need to do. Having that seal of 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 approval from several big organization, I think would make a big difference in your work.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't hear much
and
conspiracy theory anymore because we have been able to prove it with math. About the only person that I get pushback from, is, there's a representative, I think he was in office for, like, 2 years in Virginia, his name's Denver Riggleman. He pushes back and says, he's an expert and blah, 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 but we've actually already addressed that situation. I actually have an article that it's in the title, "This is why Denver Riggleman is wrong." Some of the assertions he makes, it's clear he doesn't actually even understand basic technology, so I don't understand why he thinks he's an expert when it's clear. I mean, some of the stuff that he's not grasping is like ninth grade level technology classes in high school. So I understand that he owns stock in an AI company, or AI companies plural, but and he says he owns AI companies, whatever. I'll tell you directly what my technology guys said when they read his statement. They said it's clear he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, pardon my language. And they said, you can own stock in a restaurant or own a portion of a restaurant and not be a chef. And it's clear that's what this dude is because he doesn't understand this like very basic level technology. So, and again, he's a Republican for heaven's sake. Why are we platforming Republicans is beyond me. He voted against gay rights and everything else for the 2 years. The Heritage Foundation gave him a 95% rating, which is 10% higher than the average Republican. And we've got people over here, but Denver Riggleman said blah blah blah. And I'm like, I don't care what Denver Riggleman said. He's wrong. Why are we listening to this dude?
I I
Oh,
usually say this to my viewers, and this is a wisdom I have from being in a lot of conflict. What you need to do is not beat the Republican voters. You're trying to beat the Republican candidates. But what you're trying to do is win the moderate and the Republic vote. I think that is something that like like Republicans have voted for Trump because he has pushed that he's going to stop human trafficking. Republicans voted for Trump because he said he's going to end and spread the pedophilia document of Jeffrey Epstein. Other than the stolen election, I'm talking about why far right Republicans voted for Trump. He promised like that he's gonna. I love your cat, by the way. He promised that he
I have
promised that
to.
he's gonna fix the economy. He promised that he's gonna do amazing sales for all the farmers. He promised that he's gonna help the middle class and the low class. So people who voted for Trump, they voted for him based on promises that were never gonna be met. Now that we're in it, I definitely think that as someone that grew up in a cult and my parents wanted me to become a mujahid, basically a religious holy fighter, a terrorist. And I became a specialist in anti-Islamic terrorism and specialist in Islamic extremism at this point. But because of that experience, I can tell you that we need to talk to these Republican voters as if we are missionaries. When you are a missionary, you take an insult. When you're a missionary, I'm not telling you to do that. This is what I do. When I'm a missionary, I listen to the other side. I take their insult. I smile. And by the end of the day, all I want them to say, I think you're one of the good ones. And to me, that's okay. Like, even though that I understand that that alone can be insulting, but to me, I'm just trying to get a message across. And if getting them just to notice that I'm one of the good ones
Mm,
and getting that message delivered to me is good enough to start with because I have just softened their hearts.
mm,
And when we attack someone in any type of cult, the easiest thing for me inside the cult is to think of you as the enemy.
right, for
And the
sure.
studies have shown that as much as that we have income inequality, what end up having is we have uh, polarization between the right and the left. And that's exactly what the 1% is doing. The 1% is fucking up our election. The 1% is buying our
Yep,
equipment. The 1% is making sure that we win or lose. And yet we are the ones on the right and the ones on the left paying the price and believing in whatever lies they're doing, donating money for this campaign and that campaign. And we're not getting any change happen. So
right.
I think people need to realize that there needs to be an end to this stupid culture war, and we need to fight back against the class war. We need to
Oh,
get back to where every
100%.
American has a chance for the American dream, rather than every time I wake up, I feel like, oh my God, what did I bring myself into
Right,
this? I have to pay these bills. I have to pay all. I'm in loans. I can't even keep up with my college bills. I can't keep up with my electricity. I can't keep up with my car. I can't keep up with my house. And the oil bills is going up and going down. You're not sure if you're getting your shipments from across the
right.
world. You're not sure if you have a staple business or not. The farmers in the middle of Kansas, in the middle of the in the Midwest, are not no longer selling their soybeans to China.
Yeah.
So
I wanna
everyone's getting
can I
fucked.
interject on something right now real quick?
Absolutely.
Glad you brought up the farmers because what I think people don't understand and what's happening with this current regime is they are trying to destroy the economy. So when we talk about, we need to be in the streets, we need to shut the economy down, they are trying to do that. Project 2025 is for the full destruction of the economy. And the reason is because then they go in as these farmers are losing everything and they scoop up all the land so they can build more AI data centers. So we are feeding into that grand master plan that they have of making it their own fiefdom by feeding in by doing that by shutting down the economy. Now, does that mean we should still keep up with our boycotts? And my hair's going crazy. I'm finally growing hair back. Yay! Um, we should, of course, stick with our boycotts and all of that. But to your point, and something that we've been doing this whole time, reaching out. Now, I'm ticked off at Denver Riggleman because he keeps calling us conspiracy theorists. As far as the rest of MAGA, we every single day we are having conversations because they are coming out of this, decades long disillusionment. They've been gaslit, they've been watching Fox News. If you're in the military, you know that you're getting Fox and pumped into your tents, and that's like that, and ESPN is about all you would get. And so you're living in this nightmare, far right nightmare, thinking it's reality. And now that Trump's done all this heinous crap, they realize it's all lies. And so they're coming out and saying, what can we do? And instead of, I like to use the boat analogy, although I was Army and not Navy. Maybe I should have gone Navy. But we are all need to be in the boat and we need to pick up our oars. Some of us are sitting here holding them. And instead of smacking each other and smacking MAGA with their oars, we need to hand them one and say, get in the boat. We got to go in this direction. And once we
Hmm.
all get in this boat and start rowing, they, the upper 5% are going to realize we're coming for them. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take all of us. It's going to take millions of us putting pressure on the state legislators, the state attorneys general, the state secretaries of state to open investigations into these companies. And again, I will do a whole post that is just a call to action with scripts and what to say and who to call and the phone numbers and all of that as its own standalone post, because those phones need to be ringing. If you live within proximity to some of those offices, gather a group of friends and go knock on the door. I talk about this a lot because I used to do it in DC and other statewide offices. I'm a very tall individual. I'm not a small human. So I put on my 3-inch stilettos and I knock, knock, knock. I got something to say and you're going to hear it. And that is how we get things done. And we can do this. I refuse to believe that we are going to lose our republic to an orange pedophile clown who stole both of his elections and we just sat here and did nothing about it. I can't. I believe too much in humanity and too much in the Constitution. I signed that dotted line to protect the Constitution, and the American people are an extension of that promise. And I may be fighting cancer, but damn it, I'm fighting for democracy harder because we
You
can't
mean, look,
go down.
I only can stand and give you a salute. Not only you're fighting cancer, but you're fighting against this corruption. So there's only respect for that.
Well, it is what it is. We're all where we are for a reason, right? So it's go time. We just have to get this done. So if any of
Do
your,
you have a final message that you'd like to give everyone?
it's really kind of what I always sign off with is hold on to your hope. Because if you don't have hope, man, that is a downhill slide and it's a fast one. So just, you know, stay there, stay in that space. It's okay to hold, despair in one hand, but hope in the other. How human of you, how human of all of us. These are hard times, but we can rewind the clock. We can get these justices off the bench. We can get the judges impeached that he's put in position. We can do hard things and we will do hard things. And it's time. It's time for, women especially. I think, we're coming into a period that I think we're going to have some matriarchal leadership getting into office here because it just seems like it's time. We men have been running things for a while and things are a little bit messed up. So no offense.
Speaking of matriarchal, I wrote a really nice article and I published it yesterday about the matriarchy of women in Arabia before Islam, uh, during Islam, and then during our modern world, how it changed and where it started and what changed it and how economy played in the whole part. So if you're interested in that, I actually wrote an article. I want to take another second and I want to ask everyone that is not subscribed to This Will Hold and Tea up here. Go ahead and click on my name up there. You'll see a list drop down, and then you'll find This Will Hold's account. Subscribe to our account. Do not unsubscribe. Make sure that you are subscribed. Well, how much is your premium membership, by the way?
Oh gosh, it's $5 a month. We're not expensive. Um, yeah,
She
we don't,
she
we don't
actually needs
do
your
well any.
support. They have a lot of bills coming up. They are moving from one place to another, and this is they're getting treated for the cancer. Your support goes a long way. It
We don't.
pays for the bills.
Just so you know, we have never put out a single article and put a paywall on it. Democracy is not ours to paywall. It belongs to we the people, all of us. So, and I do try when if folks send messages, I do try to respond to all of them. I'm also on Signal. That's where we get so many whistleblowers in our DMs. We've had several at this point. We just did the whole big UAE with Ashley St. Clair and the UAE article last week. That UAE revelation, if y'all haven't read that article, that is the piece of information that gives the states, they can open an investigation based on that right there. Every single state has standing. So I'll add that into the one that I do that's got the call to action because every single state can investigate that foreign interference with the UAE And that gives them grounds to open investigations into Elon Musk and all the rest of the players that are involved. And that's how we get this done. We just have to be loud and angry and proverbially, I just totally messed up that word, in the streets. I'm not saying anybody don't put your bodies on the line. If you're nervous about rallies and whatnot, don't go there if you are. But call, and knock on doors if you're willing and able. So and like I say at the end of every article, it doesn't take courage, it doesn't take permission to enforce the Constitution. And frankly, the Declaration of Independence gives us the right to remove a government that is not working for us. We just need courage, and courage is contagious. So hold on to your hope. And that's my final word.
It's
How's
one of my, that's an amazing word. I really appreciate you actually coming. Thank you so much for giving us a lot of your time. This is almost 2 hours of your time, even though you're busy and you have to get going. One of my mentors, or not mentors, one of my role models that I've been watching since I was just graduated high school into college, Philip DeFranco. He always says, "You may not fuck with politics, but politics will always fuck with you." And the
accurate?
real situation, yeah. So if you haven't fucked with politics, maybe it's time for you to fuck with it. Look at it, understand the situation, and find out what is your role in this action. You don't have to be the baddest ass in the group. Just know that every one of us has something that they could do to make a difference within this community. We are a grassroots community here, and we are focused on making change. Like, subscribe, and share. My premium membership is actually also $5 a month or $30 a year. It is cheap on purpose, allowing everyone to have an access. If you cannot access my premium membership and you cannot afford it, send me a message to my DM with your email associated with your account, and I will happily give you a year on the house. No problems, no questions asked. You don't need to tell me your situation. Just let me know that you want a premium membership and you got it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for showing up. And thank you for everyone that has asked a question or made a recommendation. You make this happen. You make it possible. Without your support, we wouldn't be here. And as always, I like to say, مع السلامة, bye bye, وبالإنجليزي. Goodbye. We'll see you tomorrow.